Hey there, how you doing? Today's episode is going to be on my health history. It's relevant because this is what has really inspired me to get to this point where I was willing to put this challenge to the test. As far as my health history goes, we'd have to be starting, I guess, with obesity. Probably not till I was about 10 or 11 years old that I started putting on weight. By the time I was 16, I must have been at least 350 pounds. I dropped my weight down to a very muscular, I think my lowest was 204. And I mean, my hip bones were sticking out. I was really thin and I had low body fat, but still a wide frame. I was built like a man at 18 years old. By the time I was 19, I developed hypothyroidism. And hypothyroidism, it's a gland, the thyroid gland is in your throat. And what it does is it regulates your metabolism. So I put on 40 pounds in 3 months, and I was exhausted all the time. I was sleeping on my breaks, sleeping at lunch. I was sleeping after work for about an hour, and I was exhausted within an hour after waking up. So I'd take my nap and I'd feel good, and within an hour, I was out of it. It was pretty rough. So either way, this guy wasn't really the best doctor. And he refused to accept the fact that I was possibly dealing with hypothyroidism, which turned out I was. So he had to make a very humbling call the next day. His answer was, women get hypothyroidism, Bruno. You don't have that. And I was like, could you just test for it anyway? So I had it. And but he put me on the weakest dose. That's all I needed. For the next 8 years or so, 7 or 8 years, I was very inconsistent with it. I would run out and I wouldn't bother refilling it again for a month or 2 or 3 or 4 months. When I was about 27, my doctor diagnosed me, a better doctor, he diagnosed me with high cholesterol. And he said, your cholesterol's high because your thyroid is out. We need to get your thyroid back in check. And then we'll hopefully help with your cholesterol medication. So either way, I switched over to being really strict with my thyroid medication by that point. When I was about 25 to 28 years old, I was getting these chest palpitations, and it was a strong thump, and it would alleviate the sensations in my chest that was like a adrenaline rush in your chest, but not your stomach. And I'd have this fluttering and then a solid thump. And then it would die off by about 75%. And then a follow-up lighter thump. And then that would get rid of the rest of that sensation. And I had a Holter monitor on at work, and I was working at a naturopathic office at the time, and the naturopath happened to see me with this Holter monitor, and he said, what's going on? So I told him, and he said, how's your stress? And I said, stress is good. He said, it's best it's been in a few years. You know, I'm paying off bills left, right, and center. I was in a lot of debt during college and after college. And he said, okay. So when you're in a lot of stress for years at a time, especially, or it's like when you have a sick loved one in the hospital, or you're going through some, major thing, crisis in life. He said, your adrenal gland is what gets you through it. And when you're done, what happens is your adrenal gland is still pumping and it doesn't stop. It sort of creates an adrenal fatigue. So he said, you need to take vitamin C, high dose vitamin C. So I started taking 3,000 milligrams at a time, probably about 6 or 7 times a day. It was absorbing and it would go out within 2 to 3 hours. Vitamin C doesn't stay in your system too long. So I'd have to take it again and again. And this is what happened. Within 1 day, after I had these palpitations dozens of times a day for about 3 years, within 1 day, and the doctors couldn't figure it out. By the end of the first day of taking the vitamin C, my sensations went away by about 75% in frequency. By day 2, my palpitations dropped by 100%. The doctors couldn't figure it out. They refused to accept what the naturopath had said, and he nailed it. So I also developed gout. And I had the classic waking up one morning with a really sensitive toe. I had the blanket over my foot and I was like, ow. I woke up and it's like, ow. And sure enough, I thought, that's what happens when you get gout. You can't even handle the weight of a sheet lying over your foot. Not surprising. I had a really bad diet. And I was active, but not consistently. I probably worked out maybe 8 months out of the year inconsistently, but I was still active between that and martial arts and everything. But I was still a pretty big guy. By this point, I was in my mid 300s. I was floating between 315 and 350 again. So I had yo-yoed back up through the years. I just started taking anti-inflammatories, and I started eventually taking meloxicam, which is Mobicox. And I was taking that to manage my gout attacks. And by the time I was 37 or 38, I think about 38, I lost a lot of weight. I saw a doctor in Toronto for sugar addiction. I was probably at 1,200 calories a day, and I was weak and I was tired and I was cold. I was tired and I couldn't nap. My energy was through the roof though, but I was exhausted. I'd lie down to take a nap in the afternoon, couldn't do it. So anyway, the whole time I was struggling with gout. And what happens is when you're losing weight, the uric acid is in competition with the ketones in your blood. And the kidney wants to flush them both out, but it'll always choose the ketones before the uric acid. So the uric acid was backing up in my blood and I was getting these gout attacks almost daily. I was taking my medication, extra strength, 3 pills at a time, twice a day, 2 times, morning and night. And that was basically managing my gout. I had it every day and it was all the way through that weight loss. Went down to 285 pounds, but I lost a lot of muscle doing that. I never really got it back. So I did some working out near the end of it. I doubled my protein. I stopped seeing that doctor after about 5 months. I lost all that weight in 5 months, over 160 pounds in 5 months. So I kept it off for a whole year, and then I started introducing sugar back into my diet, slowly, cautiously, and I was good. And eventually it just went out of control again, and I couldn't manage it anymore. A week after I turned 41, I had a major heart attack. It was in my right coronary artery. If that would have happened in my left coronary artery, I would have probably died instantly. That's the widowmaker. My dad had that. He survived. He was 55, I think, when he had that. So I have a history of heart disease in the family. There's no history of gout in the family. I've probably been pre-diabetic since my 20s. After that, dealing with gout again. Gout was a huge issue because now I was at about 400 pounds again. So I went from 450 down to 285, slowly went up to about 380, 400 pounds again. And I came across the zero carb diet. And I tried it and it worked and I was feeling good. I did it for 3 months and then I got kidney stones. Oh man, that was bad. I had sciatica once when I was in my mid 30s, and that was pretty extreme. This was just as bad. It was gout in my kidney. My uric acid was flushing out of my body, but it was backing up in the kidney. I had a hard time just managing carnivore after that. Whenever I'd go on it, it would last for weeks and then I'd stop. In 2020, because I found out early on with COVID that people who were overweight and diabetic or pre-diabetic had a higher risk of complications and death. So I thought, gotta stop goofing around, and I took it seriously and I lost quite a bit of weight. But every time I was losing weight, my difficulty I was dealing with at the time was every time I lose weight, I was getting these gout attacks. And whether I lost weight fast or slow, gout attack. If I lost weight through exercise, gout attack within like a day or two. And so I was thinking, okay, well, drink more water. Or I drink more water. I was getting these horrible leg cramps. And they were bad leg cramps. I've always suffered from bad hamstring cramps, but my hip flexors were cramping up too. And then you couldn't stretch them out because then my hamstrings would cramp. So both were cramping. So it was like I was at this crossroads. If I went in this direction, I'd have this one problem that would become very serious. If I went in this direction, I'd have another problem that would become very serious. If I went in that direction, no matter how I tried to get out of this intersection, I was blocked by cramps, and these cramps were extremely bad. They take me right down. Gout, kidney stones, and I found a link between metabolic syndrome. It was some article I read. I can't even find it anymore. It was a link between metabolic syndrome and gout. So I ended up doing some research, and metformin is what most people would take if they had blood sugar that was out of control. And I found out there was another product called berberine, and I started taking berberine, and that was the last time I had a gut attack. That was 1.5 years ago. And I was doing good. I started losing weight and everything was great. And then I put my dog down. She got sick with seizures, and I went back to just stress eating. And for a 4-month window, I just ate, I lived off junk food. It was pretty bad. For 4 months, I was 90+% of my diet. It's a lot. And large amounts, bad food. And you know what happened though? As weird as it sounds, coincidentally in the new year, because it wasn't a New Year's resolution, but coincidentally in the new year, I finally got back on track with carnivore. And I always likened since my kidney stones, I always likened it to like a plane trying to get off the runway. And I'd try it and I'd fail, and I'd try it and I'd fail. I did great the first time, but after that, I couldn't get too far into it. And I was usually, because it was gout. Gout was really getting to me, and it was like I couldn't lose weight without getting bad gout attacks. And once I fixed the blood sugar spikes, the gout went away, because the blood sugar spikes were screwing with my insulin. So it was all, yeah. And so that's why I got to this point now where, I decided September 1st I'd do this challenge. So history of metabolic syndrome, gout, heart attack, major heart attack, which I might get into in another video as well, and hypothyroidism. So we're going to see how this goes, see if we can have an impact on my thyroid gland as well, going to the lion diet. So thanks for listening. I know it can get kind of dry.